Hello, students. Yesterday we discussed about the theory given by Ferdinand de Saussure, and Saussure discussed about the structure of language. And in his structure of language, he discussed that how with the language itself is having a sign, and that sign is divided into signified and signifier. And besides that, also, he had talked about other structures within the language, which is not, of course, in your syllabus, but still, then I'm just briefing that he told about language and parole, as well as word and symbol, and the syntagmatic and paradigmatic aspect of the sign, as well as synchronic and diachronic aspect of sign. These are the things which are very important aspect of Saussure's concept of language. But all these things I'm not going to discuss with you, as these things are not there in your recommended book which I am following, that of Bibhas Chaudhary. And today we are going to look at the next chapter, that is Claude Levi-Strauss, another structuralist who is talking about the binary structures. And his studies are on the study of Ferdinand de Saussure, and Strauss is also relying heavily on Saussure's concept of the complex structure of language. So initially, we have to know that Levi-Strauss was a great anthropologist, and he had done great work in modern anthropology, and he has applied that experience of anthropology to explain the structure of language. Because we have seen that Saussure is talking about the meaning of a word with human culture, society, time factor, etc. So Strauss is also bringing anthropology to the language from that point of view to explain that how the linguistic structure is a very complex structure. So he is trying to explain in his essay from the beginning. I'm just going by the points because we can't discuss everything how he has told uh, within a very short span of time. So he is telling that people want to see in structuralism radical shift in metaphysical perspective, but I think of it as little more than a way of knowing or an attitude towards things, and an old one at that. So he's telling structuralism is a way of knowing how the attitude towards them is in people. It is our attitude which creates the structure, or which helps us in deciphering the structure of language. So he is telling, instead of treating things as isolated realities, I attend to the relations attending them. Therefore, he is telling that he is taking a pluralistic approach to analyze the linguistic structure. He is not going to look at the structure as an isolated phenomenon. The structure is never an isolated thing, it is always a pluralistic or complex entity. And he is making a comparison. The physical and natural science have achieved this stage by succeeding in isolating for each type of problem a small number of significant variables at the heart of quite complex phenomena. So he's telling what is the difference between science and language. So he's telling that in science or in a scientific structure, science always tries to analyze structure and to isolate them part by part to understand its function. As you know, that nowadays there is so much of experiments and research is going on about the coronavirus. So scientists are engaged in breaking down the structure of the virus so that they can find any remedy for that. But he is telling that besides science studies objects, and it is particularly difficult for man to agree to become an object for himself by making an abstraction of his subjective existence, since he is at the same time both subject and object. So, in physical science or natural science, science can break down the complex structure into simple or single existences or elements. But in human science, that is not possible. Why? Because human beings are both subjective and objective. They are both subject and object. So, human science cannot simply break down the complex structure. It is almost impossible because the subject and object both are similar, they are same. The subject is not different from the object. It is involving subjective. Therefore, the human science cannot be like that of physical science. So he is telling that one can foresee that as they progress, the human science, much more than their sister fields, will be constantly running into irreducible antinomy. So, human science cannot be reduced into antinomy. Antinomy means different elements or binaries, and that is the problem. As well as there is also problem that the structuralism constitutes precisely an attempt in a few fixed and limited areas. And in the field of human science, structuralism cannot be analyzed because it is fixed in a new manner other than the physical science structures, and it is also limited. To circumvent this twofold obstacle, structuralism tends towards objectivity by considering preferably those phenomena which develop outside the disturbances and illusions of conscious thought process, and for which it is possible to restrict oneself to a relatively limited number of variables, which may explain the diverse forms that are the same phenomena take on in different societies. So he is telling, therefore, if we have to approach structuralism in language or in human science, we have to take into consideration that there are so many things outside the structure which is influencing the structure in such a manner that it is not possible on the part of the analyzer to fix a particular aspect as the field of study. Suppose I am giving you a better example for clarity. Suppose your building is having some problem, it is a structure. You have invited an engineer, and the engineer may take help of other engineers. They will come and they will ultimately point out where is the problem by analyzing, by differentiating different aspects of the building. But a human structure or a language structure, suppose you are looking at a language. Suppose the sentence is, I want that pizza from the uh, uh, burger corner. So suppose this is the sentence. I want the pizza from the burger corner. Now, as a linguist, how you will analyze this structure? You may say, sir, this is a very simple sentence. It is having one subject, one object. But the thing is that when you say, I want, and you are a person from Bizni in Assam, and you want a pizza. So, as a linguist, I will be searching for what is the pizza. So, in Assam, traditionally there is no pizza. So, I will be going out of Assam, I will be studying various things, and then I will come to know that pizza is an Italian food. Then you want it from the burger corner. I will be studying for what is burger corner. So, what is the concept of burger? And then I will discover that the burger is some food associated with American culture, American society. And there is the word corner. So let us look at this sentence. What will happen? You are an Assamese living in a remote place like Bizni. Suppose this sentence is there and you want a pizza. How come you are having love for pizza, an Italian product? So I will be searching for any relationship between the pizza and you, or whether from any of your families had been to Italy, or someone brought a pizza to you, or ever you have tasted the pizza, and where you have tasted the pizza. And if I will go for that, then again I have to search for the burger. Where is your American connection? And suppose that will also be found, then I will be searching for the word corner. Why the burger shop is having the word corner? So in this way, what will happen? That I am going through a very complex structure. Why an Indian, instead of tekli pitha, is searching for pizza? The Assamese fellow is searching for pizza. Why? Why the love for pizza? I can't explain. So he is telling that in human science, there is a very complex thought process, and there are number of variables which may explain the diverse forms that the same phenomena take on in different societies. And if this sentence will be applicable to different societies in India, even in Europe, in America, there will be a very complex meaning coming out of it. In Assam, the same sentence will be having a meaning because we have tekli pitha, so we don't like it. we want pizza. In South Indian concept, maybe in place of idli, the pizza will be compared. Maybe the pizza will be compared with other such delicacies in different parts of the world. So it has become a complex structure. Therefore, he is telling that people wanted to see in structuralism a radical shift in moral, even metaphysical perspectives. Although it boils down to what I would call in philosophical jargon an epistemological attitude towards phenomena. So he is telling that language structure or linguistic structure is an epistemological attitude. It is creating an epistemological attitude towards phenomena. Then he is telling that everybody will agree that the Saussurean principle of the arbitrary character of linguistic sign was a prerequisite for the accession of linguistics to the scientific level. Then he is telling, first thing you realize in your mind that linguistic structure or human science is highly complex, and there are so many things outside the structure to be studied, to be related, to get the meaning. But that meaning can vary from culture to culture, from place to place, from person to person, from time to time. Okay? Therefore, he is telling the Saussurean principle of arbitrary character of linguistic sign is a prerequisite if we approach linguistics to be studied in scientific level. So he is telling the second thing is that we have to adopt Saussurean model or the principle that linguistic signs, the sign of the language, are having arbitrariness. They are not fixed, they are changeable. Sing as language and also something different from it. Therefore, he is telling Saussure's distinction between language and parole, one being the structural side of the language and the other statistical aspect of time, and parole being non-reversible. He is telling, if we look at Saussurean concept of language, where he has talked about language and parole, already you must be knowing it from your linguistic class. So language, which is the principle of language, and parole means which is the execution of that language. So he is telling that the language belongs to a reversible time because it is the principle, so it moves with time. How languages are being changed over the time, historical time, chronological time. But parole being non-reversible, but parole is individual. Parole is the individual use of language. Therefore, it is not reversible. It doesn't change. How I use my language, I use it constantly. And he is telling that to understand the structure of Saussurean model, we have also to look at the myth. The third referent is myth. If you have to follow the language structure, we have to know that language itself is reversible and parole is non-reversible, and there is the third referent, that is myth, and myth being a story being spoken, it is a spoken language, and in this spoken language it is having several other dimensions which cannot be equated with language. Myth cannot be equated with language. That is the assertion of Levi-Strauss. He is telling You may call myth is equal to language if you will solve some of the problems of the myth, because myth is both reversible in time. There is one story, myth is a story, but myths are changeable. You must have known it in your mythology paper that myths are different at different times, though the main story is same, but it changes according to cultural and social influences. And then he is telling that in this way, if we have to approach the linguistic structure, then the existence of institutions having no function other than that of giving meaning to the society will be found. That means he is comparing the linguistic structure as an institution having no function other than that of giving meaning to the society. Remember, for such question it may be asked that how Levi-Strauss compared linguistic structure. Linguistic structure is compared with the existence of an institution having no function other than giving meaning to the society. Linguistic structure is not exactly giving meaning to words, it is giving meaning to the society. Through the use of a language, we follow a society. Suppose you take for example Gwalporiya language. In Gwalporiya language, as I was telling you, they were telling pani ahise, pani ahibo. So the pani, the water, refers to rain. So here what happens? The language, the structure of the language is giving meaning to the society, not to the word. And Levi-Strauss is telling that in this way, what we can say? We can say that there are binaries within the structure. There are binary oppositions. What are they? We are dealing with classes of clans. These are elements are grouped, marriage rules, and residence. So he is telling you can look at the binaries. Classes are clan, class of society, clans, you know, the tribes and clans, and there are also isolated classes. There are groups of classes. So they can be of lot many varieties. Similarly, he is also talking about marriage rules, which is elaborating later on. But here I am telling you marriage. How many types of marriage you know in the society? You may say, sir, there are two types of marriages. One is the arranged marriage, another is the love marriage. Arranged marriage or the traditional marriage, where you may not have all the free choice. Love marriage, you have free choice. But they are also of various types. He's going on to explain that. I'm not, I don't have time to explain all those, because as an anthropologist, he's explaining that. He's telling that there are, in page 148, he's elaborating that so many types of marriage in the society. Even within the traditional marriage, there are so many types of marriages. And in the love marriage, there are so many types of marriage. Cross cousin marriage, and preferred spouse marriage, so many types of marriage. So he's telling, as marriage itself is such a complex structure, in spite of having the binary, so it is not easy to simply explain the linguistic structure as a structure of binary, as a structure of simply language and parole, or word and symbol, or other binaries that Saussure has advanced. He is telling that in spite of having the binaries are there, but these binaries are also having complexities. They are also having certain divisions within themselves. He is telling binary structure is used to define the groups, while ternary structure defines the two directions. The directions that Saussure told, synchronic and diachronic, and binary structure defining the groups, we can say syntagmatic and paradigmatic, or word and symbol. So he is telling the binaries are also very complex. The binaries are also not very simple. Then he is telling that even the strictest elementary structure retains a certain freedom of choice, while even in the vaguest of complex structures, this choice is subject to certain limitation. And he is telling the structures are not exactly easy to catch. Even the strictest elementary structure retains a certain freedom of choice. Elementary structures, within that also freedom of choice is there. That means a traditional marriage is an elementary structure of the society, but there also sometimes freedoms are choice of freedom is there, but in complex structure this choice is subject to certain limitation. In complex structure like the love marriage, there may be some limitation. Even though there are certain marriages which are by mutual love, there are certain limitations. So he is telling structures are very complex to comprehend. If human social structure or human science structure is so complex to comprehend, so definitely the linguistic structure is also complex. They are not simple. So he is telling between those systems which determine the spouse and those which do not, there are certain hybrid and ambiguous forms where economic privileges allow a secondary choice, etc., etc. So he is telling every structure is compound and complex. So we can say that in his argument, he is telling he locates meaning in culture through the axis of an oppositional model that is essentially binary. So then you may be thinking, sir, if you are talking about Levi-Strauss is telling the structures are very complex, then how can we comprehend? How can we know what exactly is the language structure? What exactly is the meaning somewhere? So Levi-Strauss is telling if we have to locate meaning in culture, then we have to approach the oppositional model which is binary. That means to comprehend a complex structure of language, we have to go for the oppositional binary. As I told you that in Assam you are telling I want or I like or I love pizza from the burger corner. So if we have to look at the meaning, what exactly is the meaning, we have to go for the oppositional binary structure. So what is the oppositional binary of this? I suppose you say I love pizza. So if you love pizza, what is the opposition of it? Someone is not in love with pizza. So someone will be asking you why you love pizza. Now how he will ask you why you love pizza? You are an Assamese fellow. Why you love pizza? Look at the structure. Look at the way of finding the meaning. Then you will be telling pizza from burger corner. Your mother will be telling why pizza from burger corner. You can have pizza from Notu shop, which will be cheaper. So look at the thing. To get the meaning, exact meaning, because your sentence is not giving exact meaning from the surface. To get that exact meaning, we have to go for the essential binary model. Such a formation, he observes, enables us to make sense of not just myths but also practices and rituals that seem to follow their own logic. And these binaries or these binary models will be coming from our myths, our practices, and rituals, so that we can form the logic. As I told you, you are an Assamese fellow, you have teklipita, why you are going for the pizza? So you are explaining it from the point of view of your culture. The argument, therefore, is not that words can be known by means of a neat structure. So Levi-Strauss is telling the meaning of the word cannot be known from its structure, but that the knowledge of human behavior, the meaning of the language can be known from the knowledge of human behavior, customs, traditions, and social institutions. So, he is telling the real meaning of the language cannot be known from its structure, but can be known from the human behavior, customs, traditions, social institutions, etc. etc. So, in this way, he is approaching the linguistic structure to find out the structural strategy. That what is the structuring strategy of language? He is telling that the structuring strategy of language is the binary opposition. If we want go for binary opposition, we can follow the language structure. Therefore, he is telling the cultural historian and the anthropologist, they help in relating the developments that is otherwise inaccessible to the linguist. Therefore, a linguist should develop the cultural, historical, and anthropological knowledge to decipher the meaning within the language structure. So, these are the arguments of Levi-Strauss.